Peace, peace, Barghani, Islam, Salam, Hete Pu, and Rahubat. Gino Laco Ninani, Chief Noble Bandele, El-Amin, back again for another video. Today's video, we're going to be dealing with spiritual marriages and basically your ritual that you can do for a wedding. Okay, so we're going to get into that in a minute. But before we get into that, please check out my information. Got Bandele El-Amin, my number. If you feel like you would like to cash app a donation, please feel free. You can also contact me on my email. And you please check out indigenousservices.webs.com. It's the one-stop shop. And we also have a new website that's coming up. It's not quite up, but it's indiepeople.net, which is going to be an extension of indigenous services. Okay, so it's going to be that plus a lot more. Okay, so get ready for that. And also, please check out the Temple of New Chemists spiritual book. Okay, it is for us. It is for us who practice ancestral acknowledgement or ancestral worship. Okay, it's for the people who practice voodoo. It's for people that's into Yoruba, Santeria. It is for us as melanated people, our spiritual book. Okay, and it's for the temple. So this is one of the many books, spiritual books that we use, but this is our temple book. But it can be used for anyone. But you can check that out. You can find that on Amazon, and you can also find my books on Amazon as well. One of the most popular books is the Moorish Treatise book, which is very big. And if you have that book or you're going to order that book, then you also need to get Moorish Treatise too. Okay, so please check that out. That book is out of stock. You see, it's like $700. Yeah. But these books right here are for this part two of the Moorish Treatise, and then I got my other books. So you're going to check me out on Amazon and find you a book. So with all that being said, I want to get into marriage. Now, I've talked about marriage, several times on this page. That's basically a lot of information I've been given has been about the process of marriage, as far as how to legally be married without necessarily having to go to the state to do it. Okay, so this one is a little bit more in depth in the fact that we want to talk about what marriage really is. It's what symbolism, and it came to me in thought as spiritual people who practice ancestral worship and those things. We look at marriage from a different perspective than our Westerners. Okay, and what I mean by that is that when you actually get married, what you're doing, that wedding ceremony is basically a ritual. Okay, if you understand that. Now, I mean, we understand it's a ritual, but what are we talking about when we do a ritual? A ritual is when you do a spiritual performance. Okay, that's what it has become. And so, with that being said, when you really look at what marriage is, it's really some kind of ceremony or a rite. It's like when you practice magic or voodoo or witchcraft or things of that nature. You're performing a ritual, okay? And a ritual usually is something that you are trying to create something out of. So, for example, a lot of times you're doing a ritual to a protection spell or something to protect you, so you're going to have to do a ritual for that. And so, in the fact with marriage is supposed to be set up that these two people are doing a ritual to come together, okay? To come together to be with each other for eternity or for a extended a period of time. So it's not just a legal uh, thing. It's not just a legality, or it's not just for religious purposes. The spiritual aspect of marriage is basically binding two people together. And a lot of times they say, well, God is coming, you're coming together in front of God to bind you together. Okay. But marriage wasn't always about God, if you will, or anything of that nature. So this is talking about marriage and the origin of marriage. So it's saying here the best available evidence that they can find, it goes back at least 4,350 years. Okay. For thousands of years before that, most anthropologists believe families consisted of loosely organized groups, as many as 30 people, with several male leaders, but multiple women shared by them and children. As hunter and gatherers settled down into agrarian civilizations, society had a need for more stable arrangement. The first recorded evidence of marriage ceremonies uniting one man and one woman and man dates to about 2350 BC in Mesopotamia. Over the next several hundred years, marriage evolved into a widespread institution embraced by ancient Hebrews, Greeks, and Romans. But back then, marriage had little to do with love or religion. So understand that. It had very little to do with religion or love. Okay. Now, so what do they mean? The purpose of marriage was to bind women and men and thus guarantee that a man's children are truly his biological heirs. Through marriage, a woman became a man's property. Okay? So it was a betrothal ceremony of ancient Greece. A father would hand over his daughter with these words: I pledge my daughter for the purpose of producing legitimate offspring. Among the ancient Hebrews, men were free to take several wives. Now hear that. Among the Hebrews, which Christianity comes out of Hebrew, okay? Islam comes out of Hebrew. And it says that Hebrew men were free to take several wives, okay? Married Greeks and Romans were free to satisfy their sexual urges with concubines, prostitutes, and even teenage male lovers. Okay, so back in ancient times, marriage did not, it was a man and a woman. It didn't start out as a religious thing. It started out as a need to make sure that people, their children, get their property passed down to them and make sure that there was a biological. Okay. So you don't hear anything about God in this or anything. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that. Now it says, when did religion become involved? So religion came into the picture of marriage is when, as the Roman Catholic Church became a powerful institution in Europe, the blessings of the priest became a necessary step for a marriage to be legally recognized. And so by the 8th century, so they're talking about in the 8th century CE, Common Era, okay, or AD, marriage was widely accepted in the Catholic Church as a sacrament or a ceremony to bestow God's grace. And this was done at the Council of Trent in 1563. The sacramental nature of marriage was written into canon law. So it wasn't until the 1500s that that it was institutionalized, put into law, that it had to be the church to do it. Okay. So that lets you know a lot. Did this change the nature of marriage? It says church blessings did improve a lot of wives. Men were taught to show greater respect for their wives and forbidden from divorcing them. Christian doctrine declared that a twain shall be one flesh, giving a husband and wife exclusive access to each other's body. This put a new pressure on men to remain sexually faithful. You hear that? This has put a new pressure. But the church still held that men were head of the families and that their wives deferring to their wishes. So women still were like second class citizens, if you will, but it did. The church put a stamp on men could not have but one wife and couldn't be with anybody else. Okay, so that's something that the church did. That's something that the Catholic Church did. Okay, that was not a standard at that time. So, we got to understand that as well, like the precepts of marriage and where it come from. And so when did love enter the picture? Because a lot of us always, we think about marriage and we got to love them and these things of that nature. Um, you know, you see all these movies and, different books, romance novels, books, the way the Westerners think. So it says that it came much later than you think. For much of human history, couples were brought together for practical reasons, not because they fell in love. In time, of course, many marriage partners came to feel deep mutual love and devotion. But the idea of romantic love as a motivating force for marriage only goes back to the Middle Ages. Naturally, many scholars believe the concept was invented by the French. Its motto was a knight who felt intense love for someone else's wife. Okay, so this concept of love is coming out of the Middle Ages, and you got a knight who's in love with another man's wife, which really goes against the sacrament of the Catholic religion, because the Ten Commandments, you know, talk about not coveting another man's wife. So it's kind of weird that they had that this is why love came into play. But it says, as in the case of Sir Lancelot and King Arthur's wife, okay, 12th century advice literature told men to woo the object of their desire by praising her eye, hair, and lips. In the 13th century, Richard, physician to the King of France, wrote advice on love in which he suggested that a woman cast her love flirtatious glance anything but a frank and open entreaty. Okay, so Middle Ages brought another facet of marriage, which put love in the forefront of everything else. Okay, so it's saying basically that love was changed. I mean, that love did change marriage. Okay, over time, wives no longer existed solely to serve men. Okay, a romantic prince, in fact, sought to serve the woman he loved. So it changed the dynamics of love of marriage by giving more to what a woman is needed for. Instead of a man just wanting having a woman, a wife, because of his children, making sure that they got what they needed at the end, or the fact that she's just being given to me by her father. It made the woman have more appeal. It gave the woman more value in the marriage. Okay, so not saying anything is right or wrong with that particular thing. It's just I just want you to get an understanding of what marriage looked like. Okay, um, and then we get into the 20s and whatnot later on. Marriage has changed even more now. Women are full citizens, and because of that, they can do things now. So things have changed. So the reason why I'm looking at this the way is because when you look at what marriage started out, and from my understanding as well, is that it wasn't religious, but it still had spiritual connotation to it. Like, you would get married because you were trying to, in most societies, you had to have a woman and get married to her because you wanted to have children, and the only real way to have children in these points in time was to get married, and for you to be married to a woman who was a virgin, and that those were her children, and those were his children. So you could pass on your valuables, your inheritance to your biological. But the way they got married was a spiritual thing. And when you look at it, if if you if you look at today, and if we get married in a more non-Western tradition, but still, because we are westernized in a sense, that we do look at marriage with love, that we use the combination of our spiritual ways combined with the fact that we want love. So what am I saying? When you get married, it's really a ritual. So what you should be doing is a love spell. You guys should be doing a love spell to each other to bind the marriage. Okay. Instead of necessarily, and I'm not saying instead of, but if as an alternative to a Westerner's traditional way, you would look at bringing your magic into marriage. Okay. So, and I say that because there is occult ways to do this. The whole marriage routine has spiritual occult meaning behind it anyway. You know, and so it is a ritual. It is a spiritual thing that's being done. But in today's society, it's so dumbed down. And so, like, you look at this, the strange rituals, the occult truth behind weddings. Okay. Um, when you look at this, it's interesting because everything is symbolic. It says we're entering into a most mysterious time of year. Halloween, vernal equinox, nope, or nada. June is June, the most popular month for weddings. We know that. Weddings contain more occult ritual than any other custom in modern life. Okay? Nearly everything surrounding a wedding ceremony, from the procession of the bridesmaid to the exchanging of rings, is rooted in supernatural. So you understand that. So we're dealing with just bigger than marriage. We're dealing with the supernatural. We're not dealing with just the church or, these things. Now, the role of a bridesmaid began in ancient Rome. So that's what I'm saying. Like these things of bridesmaid and the symbolism of weddings started before Catholicism or Christian religious beliefs. In ancient Rome, as a way of distracting evil spirits from the happy bride. Roman brides themselves started wearing veils to hide from wicked forces, but only the bride can wear white, which the ancient Greeks considered the color of joy. So it was really joy, not necessarily purity. Joy. Greek brides even painted their bodies white the night before the ceremony, a custom also found among traditional cultures of southern Africa. Using the age-old system of sympathetic magic. Do you hear that? Sympathetic magic. English brides are supposed to wear an object belonging to an older, happily married woman in order to inherit her luck. So this plays right into what I'm saying. You should be using a love spell when you get married. That's when you do it, because both the people are willing to do this. Both people are already saying they want to be together forever. So both of you should be performing the ritual on each other. Okay. That's the magic. Okay. A marriage ceremony teems with mythical symbolism. In ancient Egypt, a circle was considered a symbol of eternity. This morphed into a wedding ring to represent unending union. So, the ring is for eternity. Occult writer, mainly P. Hall, Secrets Teachings of All Ages, it says, has long been regarded as a symbol of attainment, perfection, and immortality. The last, because of the circlet of precious metals, had neither beginning or end. Okay, so we understand it. Today, the cake is one of the most ornate or expensive parts of the ceremony. In East European folklore, however, the cake is not eaten but worn, symbolizing life and physical substance. Bread or cakes are sewn into the clothing of Polish brides, or sometimes worn as armbands. According to old Scottish tradition, a bridesmaid can dream about her future husband by passing a bit of wedding cake through the bride's ring, placing it on her left stocking and then under her pillow. Okay. The avocation of stomping the wedding glass in the Jewish wedding ceremony often explained by recalling the destruction of the temple. But the practice has diverse roots. Ancient Hindus had a similar rite and believed that shattering a hollow container frightened off wicked spirits. What's more, the breakage prevented the virility of a male and the submission of a woman. Throwing rice. Rice was thrown to placate or distant demons or spirits. Okay, so a lot of times, a lot of these things were done to ward off evil spirits. Of all wedding rituals, my personal favorite, and one of my most historically rich, it says, is jumping the broom. Today, African Americans express jumping the broom meaning getting hitched, and couples continue to customary rite as a reflection of joy and tradition. The practice is rooted in an old African custom in which newlyweds literally jumped over a broom to prove that one of them is not an evil double. Okay, so it goes back to evil. Evil witches or wicked spirits are considered obsessive compulsive in nature. A malevolent spirit would have to stop to count all the broom bristles, thus exposing a sinister entity disguised as the bride or groom. This lore extends to vampires. So I mean, like, the supernatural played a major part in these things. I didn't know that jumping a broom was the African tradition to do that at first. That's so it's all dealing with evil spirits, and so that's why I was like, what I'm saying is that when you do get married, that you should do these spells. You do a love spell. You should do a protection spell over you and the family, and these things of this nature. And so they're talking about June. It says June being the 6th month of the year. June possesses numerological significance. Ancient Greeks believed that a hexad, or a set of 6 points, represented marriage because it was formed by the pairing of two 3-pointed triangles, one masculine, one feminine. Known as the Star of David. And most significantly, June was known as Juno, the wife of Jupiter, which that's a whole nother thing about Jupiter, because Jupiter, Saturn play a part in a lot of older ritualistic things, but the planets and all these things come into play. When you marry in her namesake month, the Romans taught Juno watches over you with joy. So that's kind of giving you a synopsis of what really is going on when you get married. Okay. So let's look at what a spiritual wedding. So, like, let's just say you were trying to get married in a different way, what would you do? Like, what were some of the things that you could do as an alternative to your traditional Western marriage, or whatever, the traditional marriages that we see today? Because we are going into a new time and space, and I mean, a lot of us are trying to look at things differently. African weddings and whatnot are becoming more popular as well because we're going back to our roots. And very well, much well. So it says, when planning your wedding ceremony, you and your beloved may wonder how to impress or express your commitment to each other regarding your beliefs about religion, God, the universal higher power. You may ask yourself these questions. Does the religious ceremony work best for us? Would a civil work better, no mention of God? Is there another option to share our spiritual values? And it's yes, it is. So they say, what is the definition of a spiritual wedding? A wedding, a spiritual wedding is a type of ceremony that acknowledges the couple's connection to God or divine, but allows the freedom. So a spiritual wedding is a ceremony that can be the right choice for those who feel free, and nature is a spiritual experience and want to wed at an as inspirational outdoor setting rather than a church. You can have a spiritual wedding ceremony anywhere you like, you know. So you don't have to be stuck to a church, if you will. Spiritual versus religious and civil. Not all religious ceremonies and spiritual ceremonies include religious beliefs and can be the most inclusive of all ceremonies because couples of different belief systems or faith can honor their traditions by including prayer, ritual, reading, and vows sacred to their religion. However, you may be asking, what is spirituality? So having a spiritual wedding, as you see, is different. And this is why you can bring in your love spell or your protection spells and things of that nature. In short, spirituality is a deep personal realization through the experiences of life that there is a connection between you and something greater than yourself. Okay? Spiritual ceremony. A spiritual wedding ceremony is inclusive because spiritualism is about love, inner divinity, and connection to the universe or God. Okay? So, you know, that's what it's about. Religious ceremonies follow the tenets of a particular religion. So when you're doing it, like when we normally do it's usually done through a Christian precept. Most follow strict protocols and do not allow you to write your own vows. So a lot of times that's not the case. You don't want to do a religious wedding per se, but nothing against it though. A civil ceremony we've talked about before is witnessing a legal marriage. So you could get like somebody who's not a religious person, you could go down to the mayor and get married. So that's a civil union. Is a spiritual ceremony right for you? It could be. You have to decide about both of you guys' faith. You consider yourself spiritual but don't attend church regularly. So a lot of us are spiritual, or uh, practicing some type of non-Western traditional way. How to plan a spiritual ceremony. Select the right office. Okay, so you got to get the right official. Okay, which can be, like I said, Temple New Kemet, we do weddings like this. We do any type of wedding, and we do. So that means we do a spiritual wedding. We cater to the needs of the person and not necessarily a tenet of any particular religion or faith. Okay, so this is just giving you a little precept, or an idea of how to do something. Okay, opening readings, select a spiritual poem or whatever. Um, Questioning of intent, your vows, ring vows, symbol of unity, final reading, marriage pronouncement, and recession. I mean, all these things can be done your way. And that's why and this is why I wanted to do this video, because, like I said, as melanated people and we coming into our own spirituality, whether you practicing voodoo, whether you practicing hoodoo, or not practicing any of those things, but are into new age, or if you're spiritual, or you're just not into the regular traditional way. It's important for you to have your wedding the way you want it. And, um, it's important for us as melanated people and Moors to go back to the creed of our ancient forefathers and foremothers and use some of the things that we've had in the past as far as rituals that we can incorporate it also into our weddings. And like I said, I think it's very important too that if two people are getting married, that they do a love spell to bind their marriage. Instead of doing just love spells on people that you want, when two people are, committing to each other and agree to be with each other, that's the important thing. So I hope this video gave you some insight a little bit more into marriages and weddings, and maybe give you some ideas. So if you want to, please check the description at the bottom, and please, if you like the video, please subscribe, share the video, like the video, and we'll have more videos coming at you very soon. So until then, tuta anana.